For the latest top tips, reviews and advice, please subscribe below.
Hello and welcome to Attwoolls Outdoors with me, Mike. Today I'm giving you a bit of a kind of pitching / tutorial video on how you're going to pitch your brand new Telta Apex full awning. So we've got it here. We're going to kind of sort of talk you and walk you through the process of how it goes up and down. So we'll start obviously with the pitching side of things. Now, what we'll do is we've kind of got two bags here. I've just put one of them on the other side. It comes in two bags just to make life a little bit easier when obviously feeding it to the rail. Means you can zip the side panels and front panels and have them completely out. Meaning that when you're feeding it through the rail, you're just doing kind of the main body of it. So we're just going to put the panels here for the time being. Now, this is a really lovely awning designed for sort of residential use. We have almost done a separate review video as well. So you wanted to kind of more in-depth detail about the Apex, by all means have a look at that as well. But we're just going to focus mostly on pitching for the time being today. Now, we will unravel the awning. How she gets out of the way. So what I would highly recommend doing is basically by purchasing the carpet for it. Not only obviously makes it a nice sort of homey area, but you can lay it down first. It then protects the awning as you're setting up. So if you sort of peg it down approximately obviously the same length as the Caravan, it means when you're dragging it around with your hard standing pitch or whatever you need, you haven't got to worry about it scagging the roof or the sides. So it's kind of a top tip I would sort of highly recommend. Reason you want it kind of directly on its roof at this point here is so when you kind of feed it into the awning rail itself, it's feeding and gliding in as it should do. What we're going to do is just very carefully pull the awning directly over here. Now, what I'd probably recommend doing, depending on the Caravan and how you kind of fit it, well, you find it flows best. But I personally like to gather as much material as close to the rail as possible. Reason being, as you're pulling it through, you're not then pulling the weight to the bottom off. You're kind of very simply just, it's already there, it can just feed through really nicely. So I like to kind of just almost fold the fabric in upon itself, like so. But then also kind of get it underneath the rail a bit more, just so it's much smoother. It's going directly up, not necessarily round. Now, for starters, you've got two beadings on here, depending on the rail itself. So I'm going to use a smaller one just because I've got a normal UK van. There is a slightly thicker 7mm beading as well for those kind of more continental vehicles. So again, we're just going to guide it nicely in. Now, when it comes to feeding, it's definitely an awful lot easier. You've got a second pair of hands. So what I'm going to do is get my colleague Nathan to give me a hand just to help feed it through the rail. So, ideally, when in this situation, what you want is one person feeding it up and round, the other one's kind of pulling it directly through. Like I said, having that as close as you can to the rail itself just makes life a little bit easier. Sometimes you've got to edge it back and forth a little bit just to kind of make sure it flows properly into the rail. It's where teamwork's definitely teamwork. Just getting it a little bit caught. You want to come inside, Nathan, and I'll pull from his side and you can get in there and see what you're looking at. It's that feeding mechanism that really is kind of the crucial part of things. And like I said, you can always help by one person bearing the weight off the top and the other person just make sure it guides nicely through the rail. And what I'm doing here is not necessarily forcing, I'm just kind of giving a good amount of pressure through the rail. So we get this. Key thing is if you're grabbing in particular areas, make sure you're pulling on a good bit of fabric where you've got a lot of seams. This is where sometimes like a little pulley system works really well. Because what you can do is basically put it in the clip at the side. And just try to pull it through. Just going to move the fabric a little bit just to make sure we're not dragging too closely to the awning. Sedating. Just giving small little tugs, just so it helps it feed it through the rail as we're just guiding it through. Some rails can be particularly bad at this sort of thing, because sometimes you find it kind of wants to almost force itself out the rail, so sometimes you've got to slide it back a little bit to get it directly in. This way. As we go back, we're nearly there. Once you get to the last little point, cool, I think we're pretty much there. So we're all good to go. Now we've kind of positioned it on there. So we're on to the rail itself. Now what we're going to probably do next is make sure we've got an even split. Personally, depending on the caravan sort of year, you sometimes find they've got a curve more at one side or the other. On this one here, for example, you've got a very kind of flat back. So my first point I want to make sure is this top corner is almost sort of on the arc there on the corner, which is perfectly fine. And the front's going to pretty much kind of sit where it needs to. So now we've got it in the rail, what I want to do is just going to pull the front beams out itself. So with the pump, as standard, you do get an electric pump that comes with the Apex. Just makes life a lot easier. So what I'm going to do right now is just make sure we've got all of our deflation points are isolated, so they're on off. You've got a little, on the very front of it, you can see there's like a little twist valve. The centre valve, which is the inflation and deflation valve, you will have to screw that in. Be very careful not to kind of overly cross-thread it. So always give it a little bit of a countersink first, just to make sure it's all sitting as it should. Just go hand tight, don't over tighten it as well. There's nothing worse than that. And then we'll just make sure that's isolated. Cool. So we've isolated all three of the bottom beams. We're in our inflation point, ready to go. Now what I'm going to do is the easy part. So admittedly, I'm not using the official pump that comes with it, but I've got another sort of electric pump I'm going to use. It's about the same in terms of actual speed. It's just this is cordless, makes life a little bit easier. And you can look to upgrade the pump. Like I said, the one you get standard with it is actually pretty decent. But just for the purpose of the video, it's easier if I just kind of do this at its own point. So we're going to inflate. So the recommended pressure for the awning is 9 psi. So we're just going to put the inflation valve in there. Make sure that's done up fairly tightly. In it goes. Turn our pump on. Joys with these, the pumps that come with it, is that you do get a it will cut off when it gets to the right pressure. So what you can do at this point here is pretty much sit back, relax, and just relax as you go. Not have to worry about it too much. And we can just sort of sit here, let it do the hard work itself, and sit. So, get our chair out, get our beer or whatever we want to get sorted. You sit down here with me? And then we'll just obviously wait for it to kind of inflate. A little trip is when it gets to around about sort of 3 psi, you can actually kind of put it into place and actually start zipping the panels in. So we'll kind of go through that as well. But if you want to sit here and watch me for the next however many minutes, by all means. Meanwhile, what I will do is we'll kind of speed the video up a little bit as well for that point. So yeah, we're just going to sit through this for a bit. So we're now at about 4 psi, so what I'm going to do is actually kind of get it in shape. Just give myself a little bit of room. We're just going to pull it in and shape. So, up we go. Just going to get it kind of straight up right. So I want this to be pretty much dead vertical. Pull the sides out here, for example. Make sure we're all kind of there. So we're not going to peg it out just yet. What we want to do actually is we're going to get the panels and start zipping them in place. Really just to kind of, then we can sort of fully peg it out. It's a good point here, what I was seeing now is, because we've kind of got it inflated and we've kind of got not full pressure, we can kind of manipulate it a little bit if we need to pull it one way or the other. But as you can see from the side, we're quite really on the point. There we've got our lovely panels, depending on which kind of orientation you want them to go. You can then also zip it on. So that is my side panel. So we'll put that over there for the time being. By removing these panels to start with, it makes it pull through a hell of a lot easier, I will tell you that for sure. Now, that is my front panel. So the true way to tell is obviously by the span of the width. Now, obviously one side is going to be higher than the other. So you can see on the corner points where it kind of goes up or down. So that, you also can see by the side door. So there's a side door on this side over here, which will kind of dictate that this panel is for this side here. Now there should be 2 zip pullers. So you've got 2 zip pullers either side. Again, this is where I'm not pegging it out fully. Makes life out a little bit easier. Just because you're not kind of fighting against the tension. So what I do is just kind of engage it a little bit on that side. Do the same on this side. Perfect. So we're now fully inflated. I mean, the true test, what you can do is obviously you can leave it to get to 3 psi or 4 psi in place. There's different ways you can do this. Then it's kind of in position, you pop it in position, then zip the panels in, and then inflate it that last little bit. What you sometimes find, it gives a bit more tension into the fabric itself, but for the purpose of the video, I'm just going to kind of do it this way. Now, one of the things I do quite like to do is I probably like to zip everything in first before pegging it. And again, it also helps you to make sure when we're pegging the sides out, there's not too much sort of excess on one side versus another. That would be our side window. It's definitely all about having an easy life. I mean, the joys of this obviously being kind of designed for more residential use is that actually you can just use it, you only go pitch it really once a season. So it just makes that life a little bit simpler. You can in theory use this as a touring awning. If you wanted that sort of slightly deeper depth of a 3-meter touring awning with a more superior fabric and you're happy with the extra weight of it, then that's perfectly fine. Lovely jubbly. One more down. Then we've got the front panel as well. So the crucial thing is determining which side the panel goes out. You always look for which side the curtain runners are on. That's obviously quite a crucial thing. I think it makes life a hell of a lot easier when you see that. Like I said, this is where, again, the second pair of hands, albeit I've sent Nathan away, makes life just that little bit quicker from that point of view. I'd always love the zips. Let's get a zip going. We're laughing. Always make sure you pull the fabric up towards it as well, so you're putting less strain on the zip. We'll take the zips all the way to the bottom, so we can make sure we're all there. Now there's kind of little Velcro patches on the underside, so we can just make sure those are kind of tucked necessarily in. Now I'm just do that end panel, get that zipped in nice and neatly. All good and good. Perfect. So we're sitting really nice, got a sort of good amount of tension to the sides, we're nice and flat on the front. So what we're going to start doing now is actually look at nailing down some points just to get that sort of extra bit of tension in. So if it's a windier day, what I would recommend doing is probably putting a few pegging points in just to kind of support it. We want to make sure we're not sort of too unsquare, if we're going to put, if that's even a word. So you want to be kind of, so we'll start with the corner points here. So again, I'm using different pegs, I'm using my own pegs rather than normal pegs, but you want to get, you've got a webbing strap located back here. That's the first one we're going to start to basically kind of bring out and just sort of, it's designed that it can be sort of splayed out a little bit from the Caravan. Now, depending on the size you're fitting in, so what you sometimes find if you're in a middle of the size or the end of the size, it's always sometimes easier. You might have to find you have to splay out a bit more or a little bit less, but this is going to be kind of the main point at the back here, so we can kind of work our way forward. We'll do exactly the same on the other side, make sure we've got equal tension across the two areas. And we can get it looking really quite nice and sharp. Once we've done that, we then start a peg and come directly out. So with this pegging point, obviously because we've kind of got a fixed point at the back now, we've got all the panels zipped in, we can kind of pull it out. So you're putting it across one another and then sort of directly out from your from the Caravan. Now, next point you want to peg, once we've done kind of what we call the main four corners, so back to the front to where obviously we've got our lovely point. Just bring this forward a bit more. Is there's a little coloured tab. So there's a triangle which is kind of, I'm going to call it like a, maybe not a luminous green, but it is kind of like a little coin. Now this is basically designed, you pull it backwards, so it creates a triangle formation to stop the very front pegging point from being kind of a little bit too forward. I personally always like to probably get a nice straight line with this front section and peg it kind of almost back on itself a little bit, just to stop it, because naturally what it will want to do is kind of skip forward. So I always kind of peg it directly down. And it's always a good testament to have a kind of look around, just making sure we are dead straight on that point, which we are, which is absolutely perfect, if I do say so myself. And then from here, we can then just work our way around pegging out the main panel. So again, like I say, if you want a bit more belts and braces at this point, peg the guide points. So we've got sort of storm straps located here as well, so we can sort of peg those out as we kind of need to, clip them in, get good going. But for me, what we do is now just work around the outside of it. All the doors are fully zipped up, so we haven't got to worry about kind of over tensioning the door. Well, I mean that you're not sort of oversplaying it. What crucially is with the kind of, when you get to these zip points here, with these panels you want to kind of cross peg them. The reason it's doing is then pulling the fabric, it's taking the strain off the zip, but at the same time it helps to kind of, it will help you later on when you want to open and close doors, because it's just kind of getting everything really nice and straight. You see here as well, got a door located here, so again, with this one we're just going to kind of pull it back a little bit, so a bit of extra flex in the panel. And then same with this one here. Again, just a door, so we'll cross these over, keeping lots of tension in the fabric. I don't know where you put it. I can't see it. Using your pegs. Ideally, when you want to put the peg in, you want to go in about a 45-degree angle. The reason you want to go directly in like that is that when the peg's been pulled back, rather than being pulled up, it's been pulled almost leaning back a bit. Just gives it a bit more tension towards it all. The front flap that you see here is designed to go underneath. So what we'll do is we'll, again, start either side of the panels. So we're getting tension across the width of the panel. And we're going to tuck that extra bit of mud flap underneath it. Just gives it a better aesthetical look, but also there's a Velcro patch directly in the middle. And then we've got a couple of pegging points here. And again, you can shave more weight on the side panels if you really wanted to. With that, what you would tend to do is it's got zip-off external blinds. So you can kind of do that. And again, each pegging point, you want to make sure we're kind of going dead square with it. Just tuck that strap underneath. That's the Velcro patch that we're talking about there. There's a Velcro patch directly underneath. So again, that will just tuck under as best we can. Sometimes it can be a bit tricky because you've got the weight of the beams on in the corner, so it's not always the easiest thing to get directly tied in. The same premise, we'll make sure to put this extra cap, once we finish inflating, this front cap goes back onto it. Now, that acts as basically a secondary seal for the inflation deflation valve. Let's pull that tension in. We're looking pretty good. Got a good amount of tension on it. Lovely. And my last one in interlace, this back panel. Wicked. So got the front sorted. The remaining ones we'll just do is these front sections, just the additional braces. I would always probably extend that pegging point as far out as possible. Reason being because the bottom part is fixed, whereas that top is adjustable. So you can just get a little bit in. You don't want too much tension on it, just enough to kind of keep it neat and tidy. And you've got a little retainer strap there as well, just to kind of keep any excess sorted. But again, not an over-intensive process. As with anything, the hardest part of anything is actually feeding it into the rail. That's where you've got a second pair of hands. I say, even, you know, myself who pitches this pretty much for a living, I find it's with this being the slightly 3-meter deep version of the kind of seasonal kind of awning, and the materials and the specification you've got with it, it does need that little bit extra tension throughout it, really. So that's why I think for me it's a bit more extra weight to feed through. So that's why I think really a second pair of hands is ideal. You can just about, I have done some on my own, but for the purpose of not trying to make it look too much of a faff, I thought it was easier to get a second pair of hands, get Nathan in just to give us a hand. And we're looking good. Cool. So we're sitting sharp, we're looking really nice. Great tension in the roof, we've got a nice fall from the top section as well. The only thing we will do next, last I should say, is the storm straps. So, I think inadvertently, being this is a pre-production example, we've only got one storm strap on. The other ones must have been unclipped, but we can come to that later. But again, what you'll do is try and follow the seam line directly out. Pop that in the ground, just to give that extra bit of bracing. Again, it's kind of structurally pulling it really nice and sturdy. That is absolutely rock solid. At this point, of course, depending if the curtains are pre-attached or not, you can feed them in, unzip your external blinds if you want to go for that line. But again, it's a real nice hole, good option. What we'll do now is looking to packing it away and showing you how to get it back in the bag with plenty of room to spare. So let's move on to that. So now we move on to taking down the apex. We can't do the same sort of thing we did just in reverse. So with a little bit of tweak here and there. So I'll start with what we'll do is kind of leave the main four corners pegged. Reason being is just to make sure if it's windy or whatever it may be, we can make sure everything's all belts and braces. And it's not going to actually affect anything. Now, if you have got the wind coming from a certain direction, I would probably recommend pegging that or leaving that pegged a little bit longer. The reason I kind of like to unpeg a lot of stuff just gives you a little bit more flexibility in what you want to do. Structurally, it's quite strong, so we'll undo the guide line, but we'll leave that bottom corner pegged. And we'll just work our way around, doing each pegging point. Now, naturally, depending on if you're on grass or on hard standing, you'll get a different pitch time and response to anything really. But thankfully, I'm being on grass for today for showing you guys. Just makes life a little bit easier to get things in and out. Now, what we want to do really is kind of all about manage the internal airflow. So once we've unpegged the main kind of corners, what I will then go do next is we'll take the panels out, try and reduce that weight. So ready for basically, what we're doing is almost trying to prime it, ready for when we come to repitch it. So nothing worse than have to undo things when you come to the end of it. But what I mean to say really is, by prepping it now for when we're going to pitch it and then another time, it makes our life a lot easier on that end of things. There's nothing worse than kind of struggling with something halfway through it. You think, why don't I do that before? So we'll just unzip the panels out. Again, we've got locate the lip. So I've done the side one, I've done the side one, just done the back one. I have noticed with these, you've got to be careful when you get to the bottom part of it that we're not catching the zip at all. There we go. Now, I'm back at the base. With these, they're designed really to go in kind of the additional bag you've got there, but I find them a little bit of a squeeze on perfectly honest. There's plenty of room in the actual main bag for them. I like to get them the same sort of width. So, depending on how big or small the panel is, obviously with the size 11 that they do versus the 19, it could be a real mix of how many folds or how little folds you require. For this, I'm just going to go into quarters. So we're kind of sort of somewhat near there. Fold it in half, and then we go in sections, small little sections towards the sides. And I'll then go back into the main bag we've got there. Yeah, we'll do exactly the same thing in reverse. Crucial thing is making sure on one side or two sides you'll have three zip runners. But you can notice what I've done is I've left it, I've not touched the pressure gauge or anything, or the pressure of the actual awning itself. I've left it fully at normal pressure, just to, again, give it a bit better stability against the wind. Now I'll just go halves. Do. That's in halves. Once again. That's where, again, if you fold these up on the carpet, you're not going to have any kind of like little bits of grass, or you're not going to kind of mark the fabric at all. All these little things just kind of help keep and maintain the awning itself when you come to pack it away, potentially at the end of the season. Yeah. Got room for any more in there. I think we'll do 3 in 1 in that one. Got a bit short on the old width of the bulge. I'll end up having too much room in the other bag now, but that's all part of the fun and games of it. So one more side panel to remove, and then what we can do is we'll start to then unpeg the remaining 4 corners, deflate it, and pack it away. So we have done a sort of a sped up version of this as well. So if you wanted to kind of go through and have a better understanding of it, it's sort of rather than watching it in real time, and always want like a little bit of a highlight reel, if you will, you can always by all means check out that separate video we've done on that. Critic to critic. Lovely jubbly. Right, we'll open this bag up. So now we're in a nice comfortable position. We're all open. We'll just make sure we've got the remaining 4 pegging points. And again, if it's windy, you can always leave them in for the last little bit. Crucial thing is to make sure that you've not undo any, if you've isolated anything inside, just make sure from that point of view you have also unisolated air, where you will find that the air will get trapped in certain areas. Woo! Comes down quick. Like that. Make sure we're all done. Well, so the air actually comes out quite quickly, as you can see, which makes life a little bit easier. So one thing is all the kind of initial pressure air comes out. What we'll then do is going to feed it from one side to the other, depending on which way it is. Sometimes I always have like a little midpoint, which makes life a little bit simpler. But for me, we'll just come off the same point as that. Now what I'm going to do is to start with is just going to pull the fabric a bit closer in. Again, it's just all about taking that strain off. When you're pulling, you want to make sure you obviously actually hit the caler point. So I always have one hand down the bottom and just kind of feed it directly through. Sometimes I find it easier from the inside. You almost not collapsing into it, but there we go. Out we come. Perfect. So, what we do now is take a pro shooter again. By leaving the carpet in place, we can roll this directly over top of it. So again, we'll flip it on its roof ideally. Now, because all of the beams have one single endpoint, what I do is where the storm straps on is a little corner point there, if you grab that and use that to kind of pull it into kind of a nice sort of rectangle. So we're basically just flipped it directly on its roof section. Got the cader all at one end, so the beading goes into the rail. And then storm strap. storm straps there, perfect. Pull against it so we've got the roof all flat. Now, what I recommend doing is use, with the front legs, is ideally you want to make sure they are ideally kind of folded in. Try and run it in the same length with the front panel. The reason I say that is because as we kind of fold it from that side upwards, sort of from the top to the bottom, what you'll find is we're pushing all the air from the fixed end down towards the front end. Again, second pair of hands makes life a whole lot easier. We'll marry that cater up. Fold it in neat and tidily. Once you'll work from one side gradually over. So we're also working the air from one side of the system out to the far side. If need be, give it a little pull back. Just pull it backwards a little bit on the side. Fold that last little bit in. Now, one of the tricks is when you get the kind of the tie that holds it in place, what I always recommend doing is lay it a little bit underneath the one side, so basically where the valves are all located at the bottom. Beforehand, we're just going to give it a little bit of a press down, working from where the cater actually is at the top, down towards where the valve is located. It's helping any internal air out of the tubes, but trapped between the folds come out as well. Perfect. And then, like I said, what we'll do is we'll get our little ties, bring the bag somewhere handy, lift that up a little bit, chuck a bit of underneath. That way when we come to roll it, we're rolling directly on top of that tie. So we can just fold it, tie it off without any hassle. I always recommend rolling it because you kind of roll you're going to then roll any external air out of there. Try and keep your weight directly over top of it if you can. And just kind of, as we kind of go through, keep your weight forward. If need be, pull the fabric back in a little bit. And as you can see, the air is bulging out of the top. That's because the air is then escaping out of the front valves. Give it a little bit of a time just to let the air seep out. And the joy is because you've got different deflation points. It doesn't take a huge amount of time just to get that extra bit of air out. And because our tie is exactly where it should be, tie it up. We're good to go. Back into its bag. Plenty of room to spare, no doubt. Look at that. Fairness, I'll probably get the other panel bag in there as well. I really wanted to. But for the sake of keeping the weight even, or distributed, I should say. Wicked. Simple as that. So we're packed away, ready to our next adventure. But for more questions or queries on the Apex, what you can do is you can check the link below this video. It will take you straight through to our website. We have more information on things like pack sizes, 4 dimensions, individual features listed, as well as the review video we've done as well. So it gives you a bit more context, as well as offers and deals we've got going on with side annexes, mesh panels, sleeping compartments. There's a lot of different things and carpets and stuff like that as well. So hopefully it's been helpful, and we look forward to seeing you again in our next Attwoolls Outdoors, be it tutorial reveals or video reviews. But look forward to seeing you again soon.